Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review a movie called Initiation. Funny enough, there actually is two different variations of the same title of a movie. Because I saw this one and then I saw like the 1984 version that was on Tubi, and I was like, I don't know which one to watch first because it looks like the 84 movie could be a lot of fun. But I went into this one because I'm like, if anything, maybe people are also going to be interested in having me review the 84 version after watching it on Tubi TUBI. Going into this film, immediately when you see the title of this movie called Initiation, you're just like, ooh, gee, is that going to be like a fraternity, sorority, college movie? And I'm like, oh no, I'm like, all I want to just see through an entire movie is just like people going to school all day, and like we have of course like beer pong like scenes that we have to play out through every single college movie. It's like a no-brainer that you like. I've seen so many college and fraternity things that always have to have like a beer pong scenario in it. It's like the staple of every single college film in your life. But so going in this film, I would say that I have this like back and forth kind of feeling about it. So if you aren't quite sure if you can invest in this film or not, I would say that probably the best part about this movie is actually the kills. Like I think the killer itself kind of feels very unique, but it feels like his weapons of choice are very random. But like as if he went to Home Depot before he went out and started killing this day. But I actually liked the murderer in this movie, whoever he or she is. So also kind of going into this film, like I was just kind of like I was assessing who the killer might be. Like I was like, well, I would have liked it to have been this person, but like I was just like in the back of my mind, it's like, could it be this person? Like this person, like didn't have a lot of screen time, and it can't be this person. Like I've seen this person in other things before, and so like it can't be this person because that just seems goofy to me. But like maybe that's like the one thing that I'm gonna go with. Just go with that one. Uh, so at the last ditch moment, I might have figured out who that is. You won't know until we go into spoilers. So I would say good kills, good enough story, even though terrible acting at points. One girl is to like try to act sad through this entire film, and consistently everybody's bothering the crap out of her. Everyone at this school are a boatload of a-holes. Like we have like the swim coach who is just like this God, you are short of a hair of a second, even though it's 3 seconds still. Like, you are short 3 seconds. Do a million push-ups. So that way you can just, like, learn that maybe if you did more push-ups, you would just be 3 seconds faster. God, what a douche. And then we turn around and the guy is like, oh man, well, the last time I talked to him, yeah, you didn't talk like that at all. Shut the F up. Freaking coach who seems nice all of a sudden. Wow. But anyways, so School of A-holes, obviously, because that's just the role that they have to forcibly play. It's not their fault. It's not their fault that they, like, this is the role that they, like, dude, I want to get paid. I want to do a movie. Like, any role that you'll give me, I'll gladly take. That's how everybody is. So, but yeah, so like I kind of enjoy this movie. Like eventually, once we got to the tail end of it, like so, like once we finally completed this, I was like, oh, okay, like I can just be like have a solid, just okay vibe about this film, even though it was kind of like this back and forth. Just kind of like, man, I don't know if how well I'm going to be able to sell this at some points because some people might just be like, really, and then they might go click. So, with that, I would say if you want to say that you want to see this for absolutely free, go into the number of apps that I've used. Letter C movies or C movies. Go ahead and check that out. You'll probably find this movie there for probably free, or you can go into an app called Fox HD Movies and find a number of things for absolutely free, as well as this one. And so you won't have to go and pay X amount of dollars to do this into Amazon or go into Apple TV because I've been seeing that frequently with certain kind of things. So with that said, I'm gonna go into spoilers about this movie. So with that patented beer pong scene, yeah, I can't wait to bust that out on the very beginning of this film. Good God. But like, yeah, again, like 30 minutes in, I'm just like, what is like? Can we get to some like? Could someone die, please? Like, I think this like. I'm like 95 minutes and like we don't kill anybody in like like at least in the first 30 minutes of this film. Like I'm like, come on, get to it, get to murder. I know this is a slasher movie. Let's start slashing. Cause I'm like 95 minutes. Yeah, like I wish there was a lot more kills. I wish there was but there's a whole reason for the death of the people. There's a whole reason. There's a whole strategic reason. But like they need to have had a good story in between like the killings as well. Like there needs to have been something good coming out of this movie besides the kills, besides the way things kill. Because really, I just want to just could people just die more, please? But there's a whole reason behind the deaths. So let's go out of our way to say that we've seen this film because I've been taking too long to talk about this cryptically. So let's get into this spoiler time wise because it's about that coveted time again to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil this movie. Why did I take 7 minutes to almost 8 minutes to talk about this movie cryptically? I don't know. I just started to flow about Flasher. No, there's not much of any real reveal in this movie, that's for sure. Because this movie doesn't have a real like an sex with slasher kind of vibe, and I'm just like normally you would see something, but not in this movie. But I guess this is really just like for a certain kind of audience that would just be like they get to see like a bit of something. They get to see a guy jerking it in this movie, and that's really just so. So what is the audience here? Is it male, female? Let me know in the comments below, whoever you are, because that would help out. Be like, thanks for watching this. So let's go into here. So the very beginning of this movie, we have both two girls having super soakers getting their shirts wet because I'm sorry, no matter how many times you're going to spray with that super soaker, there's no going to be any wet t-shirt contest going on in this film. And plus also, like, the girl quickly removes her shirt. For what reason, I don't know. Like, those super soakers weren't that powerful enough. They were these little piddly things that I'm just like, huh? So anyways, we have seemingly this party going on between this fraternity and this sorority. And so we end up having that going on. We have these two girls, one being Kylie and the other being, I think, Shaylee, who are to go and have this beer pong contest between these two other men. So it seems that this newest recruit, I guess, who is Kylie, is to eventually start drinking, and then all of a sudden it seems like she gets a little too drunk because maybe she's a lightweight, I don't know. But all of a sudden we are to start to see her. Oh, here's also another thing about this movie. They use social media way too freaking much in this film. They either use social media or they use like texting way too much. It's a whole entire movie about that. I probably should have went into that in spoilers to just say, hey, yeah, you know the conversations that you're going to take a really hard, complicated time reading? Because that's all I wanted to do in a movie is read. Because good God, is there so many of them. They should have went back into old-fashioned calling people, because man, would have been quicker. But, like, that's the, like, they have budget to do special effects, which is, like, social media on screen. Oh, wait, and we actually do technically get a topless girl in here, but it's probably just some random photo from someone somewhere. But, like, it's basically just, like, a random girlfriend of Wes for however long that's going to be for, because Wes is going to have an interesting way about going things. So, pushing on. So, Kylie is to, I guess, get heavily drunk and to end up in a room somewhere with all of a sudden a bunch of assortment of these fraternity members. And so all of a sudden we start to have Ellery Scott. Let's go with Scott because I'm going to butcher Ellery throughout this whole entire thing. So we're going to call the girl Scott. So Scott is to eventually just like start looking around and just like, you know what, I gotta do lab. Like, if anything, my life sucks. I can't have a party like everyone else does. So let's start reining it in, folks. Let's start calling it. Let's start bringing some people home. So all of a sudden, Scott is to eventually go up these stairs to eventually find Kylie resting in this bed. And eventually, the very next day, Kylie is to tell the girls that she was assaulted, meaning that she was taken advantage of during this party, but Kylie can't exactly remember, but it also seems like there might be some DNA that had been left behind of a certain person. Plus, also, we had Wes supposedly leave a explanation point to mention that he probably like nailed Kylie last night, but like you like via Wes's post, like you couldn't tell, like you couldn't tell really because Scott like goes to Wes and it's just like, hey, I was also in that picture, and both like Ellery and Wes are brother and sister, and so like they both kind of talk at this party, and you can kind of tell that they're really brother and sister, and that because Scott had taken a picture with Wes smoking a joint, and Wes is like, hey, could you not like post a picture of you smoking a joint, like, please, like. And so all of a sudden, like, Scott is looking at Wes's feed, and all of a sudden he's seeing some like girl with basically nothing on. You can kind of have her kind of blocking, like, of course, where her nips are. And so Scott is just like, well, who's that, Wes? And Wes is just like, oh, yes, it's just some girl like I've seen, but if anything, it won't matter because anyways, so what ends up happening is that supposedly Wes had a problem before that he might have been involved in like being a little too aggressive with the ladies, let's just say, once before, like in this same kind of scenario, and that he's been very forceful on a woman before. So this time around, Kylie was to eventually like change her clothes, and we had like Scott who ended up taking this girl's shorts and trying to do a DNA sample because this college can just do DNA samples, and so Scott, who I guess is a forensic investigator at this college, because she's just really just intelligent, I guess, to be in this lab and whatever. Could you buy her as a forensic investigator? Like, I don't know. So, but she does a DNA sample trying to confirm whether or not it could have been Wes that could have been involved in the night with Kylie. So here's what happens. So one of the people at this party is to be wearing this like disco ball ash of a hat, and I know a lot of people would naturally assume, oh, well, that will be the killer for the rest of the movie. I'm afraid not. So, uh, so pushing on. So, because there is disco ball hat guy or head guy, whatever. So pushing on. So, and I thought, like, concept wise, this is a pretty interesting movie. So, Kylie is just kind of like, I'm not sure if I'm going to report this or not. Like, I think she might have told her like parents about this, and so uh, Scott is just like, well, are you going to report it? Or are you not going to report it? Because she's kind of like the head sorority girl. So she's just kind of like, okay, like, so are you going to report it or not? Because it seems like this is a college that tries to like push things under the rug. That's when we find out later down the road in this movie. So, anyways, so Wes is to go off and he is to go to his swim meet or his like swim practice with his coach being a douche, and so Wes is just doing his laps, and all of a sudden we have Wes's coach is like, dude, like we had a 3 second lead, a 3 whole second lead, and you blew that. And Wes is like, well, hey man, I'm just having like an off day. And the coach is like, well, we don't deal in off days and all this garbage. And so, like, the coach gets all of the guys out if they weren't already out of the pool to all do like 50 push ups, and he's just like, yeah, we gotta beat the competition, and I won't settle for less, and blah 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 blah. So we have we have Wes who goes back into the locker room, and the coach even further like heckles this guy, or not heckles, but like just like degrades this kid even more. Just be like, Wes, like you need to get your head on straight, and blah 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 blah, and so like this guy is just like, so I had an off day, like we'll be fine the next thing, and like this coach is just like, oh, you jerk, you whatever, like you saying all that underneath your breath about me, like that's what I would have said if I was Wes, like I'm sorry, like you just have some anger issues, coach. Like you need to wrangle that in, because like I've never seen a freaking coach who basically is gonna straight up like heavily badmouth his player right in front of him. Like I'll be like, oh you jerk, you. Did you want more lines in this movie, coach? Because like I think they were probably like improvising or something in this spot, but that's not even all. So once Wes like gets out of his his swim practice, all of a sudden we have like the second string guy who is Malik Moore also like reaming in on Wes to just be like, "Hey man, like I saw you at this party last night. You were probably drinking one whole beer. Like man, you got to stop that cuz like swimming man is so brutally important to our lives. If we don't swim, we can drown." Like, I'm paraphrasing and I'm making fun of everything that these stupid people are saying. But, like, but, like, Malik is just like, hey, man, like, if you don't show some more promise, like, somebody's going to take your place. And Wes is like, oh, so what is it going to be you? Like, if anything, you're not going to be our anchor. Like, it's not going to work out. Like, so these guys like do this like, well, f you too kind of thing, and blah 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 blah. So like, this just like, there's so much crap that just has to be eating away at the time of this movie, and just like I would have assessed by like towards a part of this movie that Wes was the killer. Like if I was gonna like say anybody was the killer, it would be Wes. Because good God, is everyone just like once he gets from point A to point B, like 12 billion people all have to give him crap about something. Hey Wes, freaking that swim, man, that swim. Like man, if you would have just been 3 whole seconds quicker, and Wes would have just been like, you. So, like, Wes should have been the killer in this movie, but that's not who I actually would have picked to be the killer of this movie. The whole time, for most of this movie, I was thinking, like, wouldn't it actually be cool to actually have Kylie be the killer? The girl that was to, like, kind of be, like, back and forth about, like, reporting this whole thing. Like, maybe she waited to kill them all off and then report it so that way, like, she wouldn't have motive. Like, I don't know. Like, really, if, like, we could have had a whole scene where Kylie did report this and, like, the people did nothing. And then so Kylie's like, well, if I'm not going to get him by reporting him, then I'm going to get him by killing him. But anyways, so let's heavily push on. So, eventually we lead to Wes making it back to his fraternity. He ends up going and taking a shower, and because I'm pushing to the kill spot, baby. I want to get some kills on here. I want to get some kills. So let's get into it. So Wes takes a shower, and then he gets into his fraternity, and all of a sudden he sees like all this furniture is being like shifted or moved or whatever. And so Wes is just like, okay, this is kind of weird. Like, what are they doing now? Like, all this furniture is moved. That seems weird. So Wes is going through the entire fraternity, like, and asking, like, hey, everybody, what are you guys planning? What are you doing? And I guess absolutely out of a number of people, absolutely no one is in this frat for whatever reason. Maybe a fire was called. I don't know. But Wes is completely and utterly alone in this fraternity, which I cannot actually believe. So what ends up happening is that we have Killer that is at the top of this stairwell, and Wes is at this front door. And so Wes is thinking that it's some other guy, which I'm assuming is either, like, I think it might be Alvin, but I could be wrong. Maybe Alvin or Dylan? No, probably Alvin. But anyways, it doesn't matter. So, Wes is to say that, like, hey man, like, why are you still wearing that goofy mask? If anything, hey, help me move this thing of furniture, because I'm going to get the heck out of here. I don't know what's going on. This seems fishy. Plus, also, we have a guy that seems way bigger than probably the other person that held this mask originally, but nobody is thinking of that. Whether it's a guy, whether it's a woman, I would have liked to have been a woman, but like that's what I was thinking the whole entire time. Wouldn't it be great if this was like, because you're thinking it's big man of a man, but man, it wasn't man or woman or anybody. It was a goat the whole entire time. Goat. It's crazy. So what ends up happening is the killer ends up taking an axe out of his arsenal of Home Depot tools and freaking chucking it at Wes, to where now Wes is now running for his life. And so Wes is running through this fraternity. I'm like, dude, you're not gonna get out of here. It's like it's not gonna happen for you today. And so Killer ends up running behind Wes and like cutting him in his arm. And so like Wes falls over. He's almost like like juicy leaving something going on here. It's gross. So Wes is now like down. He's kind of like on all fours and trying to get somewhere. I don't know where, because how exactly can he get anywhere when like he falls down like that? It beats me. So Killer is to grab Wes and kind of press him up against this door. And so now we have this killer with this interesting barrage of weaponry. You kind of can see this drill right here. That's what he uses for most of this film, which I think is really cool. But some people might be on the fence about that. Because what ends up happening is we end up seeing like Wes, who has his hands like drilled into the door, like right here, drilled into the door, and you can also see like his throat is to be cut, and so we have a couple of fraternity members that end up finding Wes after the fact, and so now there's a whole like report being filed, and like everybody's being questioned, and like we have like the excuse me we have supposedly Officer Rico Martinez was the first guy on the scene to have dealt with the body of seeing of Wes. And I guess the first guy to fill out a report. We have Counselor Bruce Van Horn, if you need a longer name for this guy. Counselor is to deal with all like the school stuff, and we also have a detective, Sandra Fitzgerald. Could have went with Fitzgerald, but let's go with that Sandra also. Let's give this person a first and last name. And I like they're not in screen time enough. Why do they have to have a full name? They're barely in this film. But anyways, but hey, good for them being here. Like I know both of these actors that I just named who have these roles. I'm like, yeah, I've seen them in a couple things here and there. It's good to see them here doing this movie. Like I saw like the counselor guy in Riverdale, so and Dead Man on Campus, thumbs up. So he's doing technically another campus movie, coincidentally enough. So going on, so what ends up happening is that Scott ends up being told by these two detectives that her brother is dead, and Scott is just like, wait, I just like texted him recently, and so we just consistently have Scott, who is repetitiously calling Wes's phone, and it continues to go to voicemail, but she just continues to try to call him like 25 times, I'm assessing, to try and talk to her brother Wes. And as she's doing that, she's breaking down and she's like, no, I don't want to go with you. I want to talk to my brother. On a phone, like, if anything, you could probably go and find his body somewhere and they'll probably tell you that you sadly can't talk to him anymore. Um, but, anyways, so they bring this girl in, and so they're like bizarrely treating her like Sarah Connor from like the Terminator. Like, hey, like, do you want to go into my specific office to just like rest there for a little bit or what? I'm like, what? It like it's a slasher character coming after her? Like, are they like on like watch to see if slasher character is coming after her? Like, what is this like breakdown? Because like what ends up happening is like they have her come in here after they break the news to her, but then they just kind of sent her on her way because they're just like, well, like I guess we haven't really like done much of anything. We'll just send you home. I'm like you couldn't have asked like any last things that you know of like Wes or anything that like this girl could have known about like the last things that Wes could have done. Uh, but they start questioning the fraternity guys that found Wes's body, and the detective is to eventually have a guy named Bo Bo Vaughn, who is kind of questioning, who is being questioned because it's like, hey, like, we found this axe clunk, like, by Wes's dead body. And do you know anything about this, Bo? Do you know anything about Hammer being evident at this of your fraternity's place? Like, they have nothing on Bo, and so, but we have Bo's father coming in and is like, "Are you kidding me? Like you got nothing on my son. We're gonna get the heck out of here. Like, is there any hard evidence that says that he killed anybody? No, he just found the body. Like, I'm sure he probably had a solid alibi and whatever, what have you. So, like, this guy is not going to be like your murderer. So, pushing on, so we have to kill another person, and let's get to that. So, let's get to a guy who ended up dying in a bathroom stall, which I honestly thought was kind of like weird, but I also thought it was kind of cool in a roundabout way. So, we have this guy who ends up going into this bathroom stall, and so what the killer does is he starts like knocking on the bathroom stall, and so the guy is like occupado, like I'm taking a and so all of a sudden we have the killer who ends up taking a knife and like slicing this kid's like ankle or leg or whatever, and so he's like, oh my god, and so eventually the killer is to break through the bathroom stall and to basically just like kill this guy in the bathroom stall, which I'm like, well, it doesn't get any awkward than that. But then wait a minute, there's another odd killing to be happening in this film. So, anyways, so yeah, so killer ends up taking out this guy in the bathroom stall, and I thought that this is an actually interesting way to take this person out. I was like, okay, great kill, cool, interesting, gave me something different. So we have Bo, who is going on to like have his dad call him after this whole thing was put together, and they could have had this like face to face talk, but they didn't do this. So the father is calling Bo and like, hey, don't tell these guys anything. Like basically just go out somewhere and just try to relax. Like try to forget all this. Like try to imagine that you weren't even there. Like, so what this kid ends up doing is he ends up going to, I guess, some like not fraternity because I guess that's crime scene now. He ends up going into some like I guess some person's or some friend's like place. Like he ends up going into some like room to go and just beef jerking it. Just he's watching a video with a rated X kind of title, and so this guy is just going off. And so while he's going off, all of a sudden we have killer that just like walks behind this guy, like slowly but surely, like creeps up on him as Bo is just beef jerking it. And so all of a sudden we have the killer with this knife who ends up knifing this guy's hand to the table. And so while this guy had just finished, and I wouldn't have been like dude, like 100% finish. Like I don't know. So plus also you have this guy with like I get that you have to like act like you're in the act, let's just say, but like I'm sorry, this guy like makes way too much noise. But I get it. Like some guys could be making noise while they uh, give themselves a low hand five, let's just say. So what we have here is right after this guy is to basically finish, knife into hand, and so all of a sudden the killer goes from behind this guy in a choke, and like basically just like kind of snaps his neck, and so we have killer who, and this guy like his pants are down, And Killer is choking this guy out, like really up high. So this guy is like straight up like standing up at this point because knife came out of hand of desk of whatever. So like yeah, this guy died, and what a goofy just what a goofy way. Like this was just like, why did this happen? But then again, I'm like, well, like watch a movie like Slackers where you like all of a sudden you see a girl who is like kind of feeling her down belows, if you know what I'm saying, and all of a sudden just one guy just starts to walk in and is like, oh hey, like I'm sorry, like I was just like I just wanted to go into some friend's room because like I wanted to borrow her notes, and this girl is just like, could you just go? Like, and then like he goes and like he's like, do you need any help? And she's like, no, go away. Check out Slackers. If anything, if you dare in fact didn't get enough of a certain kind of thing, go ahead and watch Slackers. You can watch somebody get their tibia broken. But anyways, uh, so I think we kind of do away with a lot of the deaths, the death part for most of it until we transition into like, hey, let's go into more deaths because end of movie. So, but only specific people are going to die here. Uh, so what ends up happening is Scott is to get called into the counselor's office because he's kind of just upset with Scott. And he's like, you know what? Like, because, like, what ends up happening is, like, she, like, heard that her brother had died, but the constable, whatever guy, wants to talk to her between 6 and 6:30. I'm like, man, that's a very small window of time. But okay, sure. Like you would have thought like this guy was like so severely busy, but whatever. So Scott makes her way uh to this constable's office or counselor's office. Like all while that is going on, we have like friends trying to console Scott, like flowers being sent, and Scott's like, I don't want nothing to do with that. Plus, also Scott mentions to Kylie that like Wes had been involved in like an accusation of him before, but like nothing happened from that, and so maybe uh, Scott is probably thinking that lightning is going to strike twice, let's just say, sadly enough. So, like, maybe it's somebody had reported, and maybe there was some pushing under the rug here. So, pushing on. So, let's go into, like, Scott talking to the guy whose name, the Chancellor. Chancellor, good God. Let's get that correct for once. So, Scott is talking to the Chancellor. Is like, you know what? I get like you're grieving and like your brother is dead. Just in case 800 other people haven't told you that. Like I'm just gonna like say like this is kind of a waste of school funds, and also you're not a forensic investigator. And like so, Scott is just like, well, you know what? I just wanted to get to the bottom of this because she is just a police officer herself in her own mind, and so Scott is just like, I wanted to figure out whether or not uh, that Wes was involved in this assault that happened with one of my friends that was in my sorority, because she was going to have an accusation being coming to you all to uh and I was just kind of like trying to see and protect my brother if it eventually was to lead to him. And so all of a sudden, because these guys they kept talking about Wes's Olympic hopes and dreams throughout this entire movie, like eventually when they are to do the whole like press thing, we have like the coach who comes in there like, yeah, like earlier when I was in the locker room, like I was mentioning about Wes's like Olympic hopes, and like and how like everything was gonna like just work out fine and what. No, this guy was a douche the whole entire time, and so everybody is talking like. Eventually, the chancellor is talking to Scott like later on and trying to like say like I'm sorry to hear about your brother. If anything, like he was such an Olympic hopeful and whatever. And so this time around, like the chancellor is just like, well, if this girl was to come forward, we would do a thorough investigation. Like, you didn't need to do any of this. But then also, the chancellor just kind of turns around and he's like, well, like, how about we just keep this whole, uh, like this assault thing and all this? How about we just keep this between you and me? How about we don't tell anybody? And how about we just keep Wes's, uh, like, uh, like how about we just keep Wes as an untarnished person from this school, even though technically he's dead. But like we just want to like just keep his spirit alive or whatever, like his spirit untarnished, I guess. So that way it doesn't affect this school and having this story get out. So Scott is just like, wow. So is this school straight up just saying like, yeah, like if anybody's to come forward about anything, that's why Wes got away with this the first time around, and like the second time around, yeah, like I guess Wes can just continue to get and do this and just continue to get away with it. Like Scott didn't even get to see the paperwork to see if the test was a match or not, because we didn't get to see that. I would have liked to have seen that to see if like okay, like so it was true. So all of a sudden we have Office Lady who's wrapping up for the night, and so all of a sudden like all the people that are left who are left in this office who are Shailene, who are Kylie, who is the Chancellor, and Tyler, who just kind of randomly came in here to try and talk to Scott about like, hey, like office and or lab and stuff, you know, like let's talk about that. Like Tyler kept calling Scott through the entire day, and Scott kept ignoring this guy's calls. So, and this is the same guy who smacks right into a wall. He like runs into a wall like a goober, and so like as if he's like Deputy Doofy from like a scary movie, but whatever. So, uh, anyways, so a lot of people would have probably thought that it was Malik, the one guy who was like gonna quite possibly get that whole swimming opportunity, and maybe that's why like that guy could have killed these people, but that wasn't the case. So like I was hoping it was Kylie the whole time. It would have made a lot of sense. Like it would have just like, hey, you're thinking that this is a guy this whole time, and man, would you be wrong? So I was just like kind of thinking once like kills were to be made. So what ends up happening is Tyler interrupts both Scott and the Chancellor's meeting and mentions, yeah, like I can't get out of this this spot. I can't get out of this like place. Like you guys have kind of locked everything down. And so the Chancellor's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like go through the back door, and he's like, I can't. Every single door is bizarrely zip tied shut, weirdly, to where the Chancellor tries to cut it with scissors and he can't cut it with scissors. So, all of a sudden, we have where, again, we have a spot where people are to die. So, what ends up happening is that the Chancellor is to spot the killer, and so we had the Chancer, who I believe like tackles the killer and tries to like take him down, but that doesn't work out all that well. Because what ends up happening is like the Chancellor is even like choking this killer out, and we're thinking like, man, this Chancellor is like really good compared to everyone else. Like, man, this is awesome. But all of a sudden, like we hear a little bit of like to eventually tell us that the killer had drilled through this guy's chest, the Chancellor's chest, and so like the Chancellor's getting freaking killed. So we have the killer who is dragging the Chancellor's body to some spot, and when Tyler is to wake up after smacking into a wall, because that was great, the killer just goes and like tries to like punch him out a couple times, but he doesn't exactly like he ties him up, but he doesn't kill him. So Scott and Kylie are just running through this whole entire like environment, like running like crazy. We have Shailene that is just kind of like hiding in these bushes somewhere, and she's like, "Please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the Squeakquel because there's never gonna probably be one." So she's hiding out in the bushes, like hoping that this killer is not going to kill her. So she's like trying to make calls with like 911 and everybody, and the killer is just like stalking around the spot. And so like we just have Shailene who just freaking comes up with a way to just get freaking out of here. Like she is like going through this like small opening of this fence like through the back room of this facility, and then she's like hopping over fences to get freaking out of here, and like she's gone. Like I bet she ran like 100 miles from this spot to get the heck out of there. So this killer is to just continue to keep like going around and around into this place. And so both Scott and Kylie are just like, oh my god. Uh so we're assessing or assuming it's either Scott or Kylie now who are the killers. And I'm like, wouldn't that be just like a real like a real huge swerve to all of a sudden have it be like the person that they focus it on the most is actually the killer? Because there's some like maybe Scott had some like whole story about like some mistake that happened before. Like that would have been really cool to just go into that, but they didn't. So there could have been a whole cool interesting like writing opportunities that they could have went with this film, but they didn't. So what eventually just ends up happening after like the whole like this guy is looking around for this place for killing I don't know who anymore, because I think he's gotten everyone. And so both Kylie and Scott are just continuing to make their way through this facility. And so what ends up happening is finally the killer ends up grabbing Scott, and so we just have like Scott who ends up taking the weapon from the killer and stabbing him in the neck, and so or stabbing this person in the neck, I should say. We'll get a reveal here fairly soon. So all of a sudden the killer is to back away, and the killer is to mention that he wasn't going to hurt her. And so all of a sudden, like, the killer is to smack against this wall. Kylie is to remove the mask of the killer to find out that it was actually her father all along. I'm like, good God, this is like Friday the 13th part 5 all over again, where it's like the ambulance driver, where I'm like, so the guy with like the least amount of like screen time is Keeler? Like you have the guy who I know from Castle as Esposito, like Officer Rico Martinez is Keeler. Like, okay, that was kind of cool, but still, because like that was my last resort person. And I'm like, well, it's probably gotta be, it's gotta be that that one Like, it's got to be Esposito. Like, I know him from Castle, so that's where I said it's John. It's John. His real name is John. But yeah, so I was like, Esposito Castle, is he the murderer? Because that's what I was thinking in like the back of my mind. Because I'm like, why have this guy in this movie and not have him be the killer? Because like he's like Esposito from Castle. I'm like, yeah, like should be the killer. Just because like big name and whatever. Like to me, honestly. But anyways, so like in the back of my mind is like a goof because I wasn't thinking that it was the Tyler guy because I'm like, no, like this guy smacks into a wall, so he's not the killer. Like, and like they kind of ruined that anyways because he's not in the same whatever. So like basically anybody that they were to make you think the killer was, I'm like, that's not the killer. Like, come on. Like, I was hoping it was Kylie because that would have been an actually really cool story. But close enough, it's Kylie's father who is to mention that he was the first on the scene and that he said that he was going to get everybody involved in this. And, like, you start to see all the stuff that he said early on in this movie, and you see it here and like the very small amount of scenes that he was involved in, like how he can just start to twist and turn those words and see that he was the killer, and you can understand that. And so, like, because really you could see also that um, that Martinez was consistently texting his daughter, I guess because Kylie probably broke the news to him because maybe like nobody at this school, like she was worried that nobody at this school was going to do anything, so maybe she quickly just told her father, and that's why her father was just like, dude, I'm gonna take business in my own hands, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna take care of all of this, because he basically killed everyone who like were to have thought that they weren't going to do anything about this. Like it would have really helped if Kylie actually did have a scene talking to the Chancellor and the Chancellor did nothing. Like that scene would have cemented okay. But I'm sure there was probably a number of texts that were to be had somewhere in this movie because there was so many social media things, there were so many texts of things. So, but anyways, talking about that, so once the killer was to be taken, because this guy is probably going to die anyways, a freaking like stab to the jugular. So Kylie is now just like flipping out because her father was the killer. It's like, that's my dad. And like we just have at the tail end of this movie, we just have Scott, who is all of a sudden seeing this like huge form of like social media stuff all tied to every single bit of Scott seeing all these social media things posted involving her, this killer, and everything, and knowing that she's gonna be blown up with notifications, like having to forcibly be involved in all this. That's where I would have assumed or assessed. I'm like, man, she should have taken on the mask at the very end of this, but they didn't go with that. Like, she was the person who killed the killer. She should have been the killer next. Like, but like they were. I guess they were really just like, dude, we're not gonna do a sequel. Like, we're not like. But I would have probably assumed or assessed that like, man, like somebody should have taken on the mantle, but no one did. Of Disco Ball Face. So with that said, I'm gonna get the heck out of here. In a roundabout way, but in any ways, like I think I covered most of this movie, but I probably didn't go into the exact who everyone died everywhere, especially the bathroom guy. Uh, but anyways, yeah, like I like in a roundabout way enjoyed this movie, but also there's like this give and take of poor acting choices. But like that's kind of nitpicking. I like the way people got killed because it was a slasher movie where they just didn't go with a straight up knife. They went to Home Depot and found a number of other things that people could have died with. So with that said, I'm gonna get the heck out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.